Major new developments in the deadly police shooting of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky. The Justice Department today leveling federal charges against 4 current and former officers connected with her death. Among the charges, officers are accused of falsifying documents to obtain the search warrant of her home where she was shot and killed. Then they're accused of lying to cover it up. ABC's Faith Abube reporting tonight from Louisville.
More than 2 years after Breonna Taylor was shot to death in a botched drug raid, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland today announcing federal charges for 4 current and former Louisville Metro Police officers.
The federal charges announced today allege that members of the Place-Based Investigations Unit falsified the affidavit used to obtain the search warrant of Ms. Taylor's home.
Prosecutors say Sergeant Cal Meany and detectives Joshua James and Kelly Goodlett knew the search warrant lacked probable cause, and they say those 2 detectives later conspired to cover up their lies, allegedly meeting in a garage to come up with a false story for investigators.
We allege that the defendants knew their actions in falsifying the affidavit could create a dangerous situation.
Walk back to my voice!
Prosecutors say the officers who executed the warrant at Taylor's home knew nothing about the false affidavit. And when Taylor's boyfriend mistook police for an intruder firing a shot from his registered gun in self-defense, officers opened fire, killing the 26-year-old EMT. Former officer Brett Hankerson, who was acquitted on state charges for firing into a neighbor's apartment, today charged with excessive force for firing 10 shots through a window and sliding glass door in Taylor's home.
Breonna Taylor should be alive today.
Say her name! Breonna Taylor!
Taylor's death and the murder of George Floyd sparking protests across the country.
Say her name!
Breonna Taylor!
I've waited 874 days for today.
Breonna Taylor's mother calling the charges overdue.
What we've been saying on day 1, y'all learning what we've been saying was the truth. That they shouldn't have been there and that Breonna didn't deserve that.
With 3 of the officers charged with civil rights violations could face a maximum of life in prison. A 4th officer could spend years behind bars if convicted. Whit?
Faith, thank you.
Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. I guess we'll finally say we've got some justice. But what's curious about this is that the fake warrant. Now, why would they make up an excuse to raid her apartment? Because of the ex-boyfriend that was a drug dealer? Graham, I see we finally got the Attorney General to do something.
The U.S. Attorney General. Yeah, he's gotten up out of bed. With regard to Breonna's case, they said that the officers submitted false information to the judge, because you have to go before a judge. Supreme Court, in Trump's case, federal judge. You're swearing to the fact that everything that you're presenting is the truth. Lying in that case is perjury, for which you can get 5 years in New York State. As a law enforcement officer, anybody lying in court, perjury, you can get 5 years. They knew that the information they were giving the judge was false, but they wanted to go in anyway. I don't know what was behind that, whether it was the old boyfriend who was not, if they had done their intelligence work, they would have known that the boyfriend wasn't even there with her. All right, I've had to go and swear before judges that the information that I was presenting in court was true in order to obtain a warrant. And I've obtained a no-knock warrant, which was beyond the scope of what they were doing.
Was this no-knock?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, yes, it was. They say they
no-knock.
announced themselves, but evidently they didn't until they broke into place. But I had a no-knock warrant, which meant I didn't have to announce myself. We could just bust the doors in and go in and get the guy. But even in the execution of my no-knock, I rang the bell. I told the fella, you have 10 seconds to open the door. Do not go to the fire escape. Do not step away from the door. Otherwise, we're going to blow in. And he opened the door. He was armed. I retrieved the weapon. I knew it where it was secreted. We retrieved the weapon. No shots fired. And in the warrant, I had a list of everything that I came there for, just as with Mr. Donald. They had a list of everything they were looking for. And they are allowed to look anywhere that those items may be secreted, whether it's in your safe or under your mattress. Now, if you're looking for a television set, you would not go in a drawer looking for a television set in a drawer. But any place where the items that you're looking for may be secreted, you can go and inspect to see whether or not it's there. And in the process, anything you find through that legal search is fair game. So any other contraband we come across, you can be charged with.
It's just good that officers are now understanding that there is going to be accountability. It's been too long, too many years.
Too many cases.
Of no accountability. And shoot first, ask the question later, get home, have a good dinner, we'll take care of it. I mean, we're back to the what is that, the years of Serpico, where, you know, the dirty cop is the best guy on the force, and the clean cop has to stay quiet if he's going to go against the brotherhood. I mean, what brotherhood? Who are you protecting and serving? And why do we pay taxes for individuals who prepare themselves to take our children at all cost? You know, I'm sick of this identification that, oh, black people, they're just criminal. What are you kidding me? The greatest crime ever committed is that you kidnapped me and I'm still here. You know, let's just talk about the real crime. You don't like me, but you kidnap me, and I'm still here, and you make me the criminal. I mean, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's not real. It's a game of who can we blame our hatred and our venom on. And then you get a badge, you get a gun, you get a uniform, and you're still venomous. This is not a place for someone in blue. As a psychologist, I feel very frightened that people are in that and not being evaluated or getting enough psychoanalysis to see if they're fit. And I've been saying, you know, this is a personal thing, but I have said this for years. Please evaluate officers every month. Get them on a line, get 65 psychologists and psychiatrists just on that one day. Sit down and talk to these guys seriously on their off day at the precinct and listen to the conversations they're having. Find out how much alcohol is going in at night. Find out how many of them are shooting up in their leg with heroin, because that's a big problem in the force. Find out what is carrying a gun in our community and saying, I'm here to protect and serve.
You hit on some things that I will say are 150% correct. I came into work one day, I saw a young lady at the desk. I asked, who's that? What's she doing here? Oh, she's a new recruit. I don't think so. That's a drug addict. Oh, Spoon, you know, white girl. She's a drug addict. I said, I know junkies. She's a drug addict. A couple of days later, she comes to my office. Detective, I need to talk to you. Yes, what is it? I got robbed. You got robbed? Yeah, I got robbed. They took my gun. Whoa. Have a seat. I said, what happened? And she's telling me she got robbed in Staten Island on the Staten Island Rapid Transit System, and two black guys, of course.
They had to be.
You know, like the lady in Massachusetts, two black guys drowned her kids in the car. Two black guys robbed her on the subway and took her gun and everything. I said, do you have your ID? You got your shield and your ID card? I said, let me see it. She gives it to me. Okay, I put it in my drawer. She said, what are you doing? I said, roll up your sleeves. She said, what? I said, roll up your sleeves now. So she rolled up her sleeves. It looked like the New York subway system. Tracks up and down her arms. So the question is, how does a heroin user get past the medical exam, the physical exam, and nobody knows it? Unless she has somebody in the family to protect her and get her in the job. All right? Now, we'll take this a little further. I know that black people don't ride the Staten Island transit system. And definitely are not going to get on the train that goes to the white neighborhood to rob somebody that's white and then wait for the train to get you out of that neighborhood without getting lynched? Nah. So I calmly called Internal Affairs. I said, come on up, got a case for you. I said, we're going to Staten Island. We're going to get that gun back. She sold her weapon to buy heroin for her and her boyfriend.
She live in Staten Island?
Yeah. So she's a heroin addict in the police department.
One of many.
There was a guy I did a case on. He beat up a man, broke his elbow. The brother could not extend his arm straighter than that. He couldn't straighten it out. He was maimed for life. Guy broke his elbow for beating the fare and played Russian roulette with him in a room at 14th Street and Union Square. He came to file a civilian complaint. The sergeant says, oh, you got to see Lieutenant Grippo. He's not here. Come back later. He's walking from the desk. I'm coming out of my office. Hey, brother, how you doing? He says, hey, do you work here? No handcuffs. What's up? He says, well, I came to file a complaint. He says, I got to see Lieutenant Grippo. Okay. You have pen and paper? Yes. Go back and get his shield number and his name and come back to me. If you can't do that, walk out the door. He walked over to Sarge. Spoon, what? I said, Sarge, be quiet. You're already in trouble. He went back, wrote his name down, his shield number. I took him in my office. I said, there is no Lieutenant Grippo in the Transit Police Department. Doesn't exist. He was supposed to had paperwork he should have given you, take the complaint, make a blotter entry, and forward it to Internal Affairs. But I sat down with that man and told him exactly what to do. Go to the district attorney's office to see the DA's investigation bureau. I gave him the name of the chief of that bureau, which was a friend of mine, Les Cole, a brother. Leave there, go to 26 Federal Plaza. Go to the FBI, Civil Rights Division, sit down and dictate the incident to a stenographer who will prepare an affidavit for you to go into federal court. And then when you get home, you call Internal Affairs at this number and they'll open the case. And you don't let the Internal Affairs know that you went to the FBI, and you don't let them know that you went to the DA's office.
But without you there, you see, I guess in a way we're all on our missions, because that's a mission for Graham. He had to be on a mission to look out for his people and the injustices being done by the so-called powers that be of authority. Can you imagine these people have authority to take your physical body and to incarcerate it or even damage it and have no recourse? I could get beat up in the police station and it could be said that I resisted after I said, gentlemen, by all means, which way do you want to lock me down? And I could get raped. Women have been raped. There are women who are, you know,
in a vehicle.
Right? They're sex workers. They get picked up. They don't go to the police station. They get further raped by the officers who say, well, this is what we want to do, and then you can go home.
The man, the officer that maimed him was a PBA delegate.
Oh, my God.
Whom I had interactions with because he and I got into it, and I said, you're not related to me, so whether you live or die today don't mean nothing to me. And I had to let him know. And he's like, oh, you know, Spoon, come on. I said, I'm not laughing. I will hurt you. With no malice, nothing. I will hurt you. But he got 7 years for that incident and another one that he perpetrated against a man who he thought was Spanish speaking. And he was calling every degenerative term in the book. And the guy looked at his name tag and he said, Gugin. He started speaking in Italian. He said, oh, I thought you were. He said, no. I know what you thought I was. He says, but I'm gonna come back. I'm coming back for you.
Back with the mafia.
Right.
And
that case wound up on his back too. You know, but he did 7 years. These things have been happening.
This truth that you're telling is like a movie. It's really you never know. Now, I didn't like cops at all until I met Graham. He was a nice.
He was the first cop.
I didn't like cops until I became one. I like myself.
You know what I mean?
It's a
because
frightening
he has
thing.
God in his heart. You know,
I can't say I didn't like cops. I was a kid for most of the reality of cops. You know, there's a cop in my neighborhood. See, when I was growing up, they were in the neighborhoods from the neighborhood. Yeah. So my generation doesn't know cops from Staten Island. It was actually shocking when I got about teenage life to see a white cop in a black neighborhood. I was like, what's he doing here? Is he lost? Why would he be here? White cops didn't police black communities. We went, we went from, well, my generation, I went from Harlem to Crown Heights, and I still only saw black officers. And it was nothing for your mother to say, well, when you see the officer today who's on the corner, who's going to make sure you get in the subway to go to school, give him a piece of cake. Because I had told him when I was coming home the other night that I was baking a pound cake. Like that kind of thing. Or even in our neighborhood in Harlem, we knew all those officers. They were the kind, they were truant officers to us. Although they weren't, they made sure you didn't cut school.
Right.
You couldn't cut school because you already knew.
They knew your name, they knew your mother.
Your parents. You said, Officer Johnson's on duty today.
Well,
I was going to cut after third period, not today,
In my ancient days, 40s and 50s in Harlem, all the policemen were Irish.
Oh, well, see,
You only had Irish cops.
Well, that's
and a few
right, that's
black
right.
ones,
But like a spoonful, right?
Yeah, well, Bev can tell the few that she knew in her neighborhood. I think they had 3 on horses.
Wow, what a change.
But in Harlem, that's all you had is white.
Well, by the time I came along in 1961, they had something called the Community
61.
Affairs Officers, which they returned to.
Yeah.
Like
They
now
still
they're
have it.
back out
Yes.
there. But the officers were called Community Affairs, and I don't even remember, frankly, and because I've always been a little afraid of guns, I don't remember seeing a gun on an officer. But I do remember seeing the uniform and a big nightstick and some little thing. I don't know what they call those little things.
The slapper or the blackjack.
Yeah, okay, maybe, yeah. So, but the issues for all of this with the Breonna Taylor incident is that we got justice, but did we just get justice? Are we ever going to be able to say just enough is enough already? Can we just get to the place where the Karens and the Beckys and the Cynthias and the Susies aren't going to call the cops on you when you're standing too close you're standing too close to them in a supermarket. You are a threat. And then somebody takes that seriously.
Well, we've always been a threat. Well, let's talk about the Second Amendment and Carol Anderson, the book she's written.
Yes, very important
White
stuff.
Rage. Talking about the Second Amendment, where they first developed it, and how it was fear of black people during slavery. Now, we're going to run the second roll-in, and this is a rather long one, so pay attention to this. It's very important.
Very
To
important.
explain how we've been always feared because we've always tried to do the right thing and get justice.
We lived in fear.
Because we came here as slaves, not as immigrants. Forced immigration.
Right.
I'll run item 2. We'll be right back at you.
Here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The Quarantine Report. I'm Amy Goodman, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Nermeen Sheikh. Hi, Nermeen.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.
Well, gun control advocates are pushing lawmakers to do more to stop a surge in gun violence. A recent study by Everytown for Gun Safety found gun violence took over 19,000 lives in the United States last year, a 25% increase from 2019. Gun sales are also soaring to record levels. Despite this, Republican lawmakers are pushing measures to loosen gun control regulations. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott is expected to soon sign a recently passed bill which would allow Texans to carry handguns openly in public without a permit. It also allows people without a felony criminal conviction to carry a handgun without a background check. Abbott has praised the bill as the, quote, the strongest Second Amendment legislation in Texas history. Well, today we're going to take a deep look at the Second Amendment and its racist roots. We're joined by Carol Anderson, author of the new book, The Second, Race and Guns in a Fatally Unequal America. Professor Anderson details how the Second Amendment was written to empower local militia groups to put down slave revolts and protect plantation owners. She writes, the Second Amendment is, quote, rooted in fear of black people to deny them their rights, to keep them from tasting liberty. Carol Anderson joins us from Atlanta, where she's professor at Emory University. She's also the author of One Person, No Vote: How Voter Suppression is Destroying Our Democracy, and White Rage: The Unspoken Truth of Our Racial Divide. Professor Anderson, it's great to have you back on Democracy Now! Congratulations on the publication of your book. And one warning, no sound bites. So this book is really an epic work. It is a retelling, a reframing of an amendment that we have rarely heard talked about in this way. Can you go back in time to the founding fathers, as they say, and talk about where the Second Amendment came from? Teach.
Thank you. This emerged out of the fear of Black people from slavery, that there was this massive fear about these slave revolts, Black people demanding their freedom, being willing to have an uprising to gain their freedom. And what that meant then was that you had this language of, we've got to keep this ferocious monster in chains. And you saw with each revolt, with each uprising, a series of statutes being put in place to say that African American, that the enslaved, that Black people could not own weapons, that they could not have access to weapons. And you also saw the rise and the structure of slave patrols and militias that were there and designed to contain that Black population. As the nation began to develop, as you had this war of independence, there was this fear of arming Black people, the fear that even free Blacks who were armed would provide a kind of sense of what freedom looked like to the enslaved. But the exigencies of war required that arming, required having Black folks in the Continental Army. But as the nation developed after that war, one of the things that you had happening was with the Constitution, with the drafting of the Constitution, because the militias themselves had proven so untrustworthy, unreliable as a force to fight against the British invasion, that James Madison, in drafting the Constitution, had language in there that you would have federal control of the militias. Well, when the Constitution went up for ratification to the states, by the time it got to Virginia, the anti-federalists in Virginia were in an uproar. George Mason and Patrick Henry were thinking about this militia being under the control of the federal government. They were like, we will be left defenseless. We cannot trust the federal government that has these folks from Pennsylvania and these folks from Massachusetts to be willing to engage the militia when the slaves revolt. We cannot trust the federal government to protect us. We will be left defenseless. And they began to demand a Bill of Rights that would provide protection, that would curtail federal power. And they began to demand as well a new constitutional convention. That threat of what that meant sent James Madison into the first Congress determined to write a Bill of Rights that would quell that dissent, that would short circuit that movement for a new constitutional convention. And we've already seen what the power of the South has meant in terms of when the Constitution was being drafted itself, how the South said that we will not sign on to become part of this United States of America if we don't get the 3/5 clause, if we don't get 20 additional years on the Atlantic slave trade, if we don't get a fugitive slave clause. And so the South had already wielded its power in terms of being willing to scuttle the United States of America. And Madison believed strongly that this threat coming out of the anti-federalists in the South, out of Virginia, would do the same thing. And that becomes the basis for this Second Amendment.
Well, there you have it.
Very
NRA,
important.
what would they say about something like this?
No rights at all.
It's such important information.
Fear of black people.
But it's going to be frightening to have crippled a people, denied them their language, denied them their humanity, and then say, oops, you're human after all. It's a very, very tough pill to swallow. I mean, you know, we've had dolls, or boys have had their G.I. Joes. Imagine your plastic toy becoming a boy. I mean, this is a Pinocchio story, but growing up and becoming a boy, a real boy. You've played with G.I. Joe, and all of a sudden at 14 years old, G.I. Joe appears in front of you and says, all the time that you were playing with me, by the way, I was human. And I just grew up, and I'm, you know, what do? Tell it to leave the house? Tell it that you, oh, did I take care of you? Did I care for you? Or did I ever hurt you when I was hitting your head over the radiator in the winter? The point is, we were human. We were not cattle. We were not cows, and we were not bulls and horses. We were humans that not only did the job that they refused to do, we willingly, in America, in the Caribbean, in South America, wherever we were, we willfully remained there, knowing that one day our faith would get us through. We kept a real faith. We took a religion in exchange for faith. And that is the destruction of our original thought. It isn't a shame or a crime to be Christian. The problem is, who is your Jesus and what is your God? And you are still sometimes looking for this individual who kidnapped you, who took away your humanity, to save you. They cannot save themselves until they have officially received the wisdom that there is a God and it is not they. And there is a need for them to get forgiveness within that concept of God, and to responsibly respect by apologizing and giving me my 40 acres and my mule on time, which I've been waiting for 400 years.
Well, I don't think we should wait for a handout.
Unfortunately.
We should take
I took my 40 acres, but I think everybody should get it, you know?
Yeah, no,
everybody should get it. We shouldn't have to say, well, I'm going to get on this job and I'm going to do 37 years and then I'm going to save and I'm going to get a house.
You make your own individual. I mean, see, I've never had an inferiority complex, and I was raised in the 40s and 50s when blacks were. Well, I mean, step and fetch you. You know, and all this imagery.
We were Negroes.
And Tarzan was a good friend of yours.
But
it was always a joke to me.
Nothing negative about being Negro.
Seeing Cleopatra, Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra, I knew in my heart that Jesus was black.
Where did you get that knowledge in your heart from? Your parents, your teachers?
Well, just looking at it. I mean, looking at the fact that Tarzan was white, and I can understand how anybody could stand in the sun and not get a sun. At least a suntan.
Or even how did he get
you
there,
see
you know?
People at the beach laying out their whites, laying in the beach and trying to get my complexion. I mean, in my family, everybody light wanted to be a darker, and my mother was the prettiest color. You know what I mean? I mean, this has always been a joke to me, that white people felt they were superior. I always learned to be the best man in any battle. My father was turned away from, you know, of course I'm from New York, where I'm exposed to all different kind of people. My father hated white people so much, it was painful to watch.
It was painful in his soul.
It was painful to watch that much hate coming out.
But what had he been through? You see,
the 40s and 50s.
Right,
in New York.
Your father was before. Your father was the 20s and the 30s.
What had he been
possibly
through?
The 20s.
He was chased out of Georgia, Alabama at 12.
Okay.
He was chased out by whom?
By somebody, some white man he argued with.
Okay.
They sent him north. He said, "You got to get out of here.
Or
They're
they would
going to
kill
kill
you, or they will lynch you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So and he was light skinned.
You know, the thing is,
you know,
in the history of our people, in this dynamic of America, my old pastor used to say, regardless of what your father is like, you need to understand what he's been through.
Yeah.
That caused him to become the way he is, whether he's an alcoholic or addicted in one way or the other, because we have to remember that all of this has negative impacts upon every last one of us. Breonna Taylor is dead, but the impact upon her boyfriend, the impact upon her mother, the impact upon the rest of her family.
And the community at large.
Amadou Diallo was dead, but the impact upon his mother, his brother, his sisters, his father, all of the people that have been victimized, Emmett Till, the impact upon his mother, and everybody that saw that. This is psychological damage that is consistently being pounded and pounded and pounded upon black people every single day. And justice is not part of the agenda with them as far as it's concerned.
What I mentioned about the hate destroys you. You can't
does.
let that.
It does, Brother Gilchrist.
Apart.
It does, because we are not of hatred. We are the very first people under the Son of God.
Right.
God's created the sun, and in this planet called Earth, I originally am born. Dankanesh, in a place in a region in the hemisphere of God's greatest continent, the first. We call it Africa, but it is God's continent. It is the first continent of human habitation. And I come from that. 3 million years, I have come through Kemet, which is what we can remember, which is an entire dynasty, 25 strong before my kidnapping. And I have remnants that have been stolen. We are now looking in the history books and looking in the New York Times. The English are returning the artifacts they stole from Benin to from the Nigerians of the. It's ridiculous, the things that were taken from us and then constantly being taught that we had nothing. Remember the statement that Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X said when he was 7 years old. He said to his teacher, I'm going to be a lawyer. This teacher said, Malcolm, you should think of something you can be, like a porter or a cleaner or a janitor. Why were we constantly given, after ruling for as long as we have, not just ourselves, but we gave Laganaria, which is the cotton seed, to Peru, to Mexico. We have stone heads that show that we arrived before Columbus. And then somehow, because you kidnapped me and I'm in another country with another language without any understanding of what is happening, work me into a mule, get the work out of me, I free myself, and now you're afraid of me. This is a very bizarre thing. We are obviously God's greatest creature.
Because you've been lied to, suddenly you discover the truth, and then you should awaken yourself.
It is an
Our
awakening.
problem today is how we fight amongst each other.
I agree with you 100%.
Because of the fact that I meet a Negro or a black person that blames all of his problems on the white man.
Minister Farrakhan,
you know,
he said,
like you said, Minister Farrakhan said that you can't blame everything on the white man, blame it on yourself. If you finally found out that you were made a fool of because you think you're nothing but a nigger, you should awaken to that and understand that you're a spiritual being and you're God's creation.
And then there's a transformation that appears to happen within your spirit, elevating you to a new you. But I don't know that I can get that to that 18-year-old that just sold a vial of crack to another one of his members in his community. And what I think we're forgetting in all of this is that there has been a tremendous departure of parenting. I'm not talking about, you know, single mothers calling themselves single mothers, fathers trying to raise their kids, I'm a single father. First of all, there's no such thing as anybody being a single mother or a single father. You're single parents because you didn't marry. But we broke down the most incredible thing that your generations had. You had family. Father took wife. Wife became the sole provider of the stability of the household, and dad went out to provide what, and by any means necessary, to bring back enough to sustain. And what we are really seeing in all of these places is a breakdown of the structure. The government started breaking it down in 1971 when they said, if you've got a man in the home, you can't get any support for the 5 kids you just had. But they're his kids. And they said, get him out of the house, get on social services, we'll take care of your kids. So there's a structure to some of this insanity.
And as you know and I know, black people have a get-over mentality.
What do you mean get over?
Something for nothing. Oh, you owe me.
I don't believe that's a mentality. I believe that's a training.
Well, it's a bamboozle because we shouldn't feel like that. I couldn't take something for nothing when I was coming up.
Let me tell you, I couldn't take a piece of candy from you. You could have been my uncle. Because my mother would be standing there saying there's candy in the house. Why? Because I was being trained not to receive things when I didn't do anything for them.
Well, don't take something that's not
You
yours.
didn't earn it. You didn't work for Mr. Charlie. You didn't work for your uncle. Your uncle gave you $1 because he came over here and give it to me and I put it in your piggy bank.
You were trained like that. How come we're not like that anymore?
Because we dropped the ball. We have joined the insanity of the United States and the socialization of America.
And Xbox.
We've abandoned our own culture to be a part of theirs. Integration was not about the benevolence of white people. It was about economics. They saw that they were not making as much money as they could make if they got these Negroes to come and shop in their stores. And that's what they did. And black people abandoned their own community and their own businesses to run to their stuff like their milk
because we have been so, if only they would let us in, for God's sake, if they would let us in their schools, if they would let us in their stores, if they would let us in their neighborhoods. Listen to this. Recently, I'm reading an article about a very intelligent black man with a very intelligent son and a very intelligent woman move into an all-white neighborhood in New York, in Long Island, get to this place, I think we all saw it maybe on YouTube, they even saw it because I read the article and then I saw something on YouTube, gets harassed by a police officer who recently moves into the community, goes to his door and harasses them all the time. But one particular time, his 18-year-old son was driving home in his vehicle and the guy cut the 18-year-old off on the street. And the 18-year-old, honked to say, hey, didn't you see me? And decided, hey, it doesn't matter. It's a neighbor. I'm going to ignore him. Gets to his front door. This police officer goes all the way to the front door, knocks on the door, and says, tell your son to come back out here, to a father who stood on the porch saying, why? He cut me off. I want to have a conversation with him.
Please.
And this goes on and on and on and on. This harassment. And I'm thinking to myself, they moved from some black neighborhood in Brooklyn to get this harassment because they said it's a better neighborhood and his son can't drive down the street. Did he really get better or did he make his community better? I'm of the school of thought that if my community is suffering, then I have something I have to do, then I'm given a job. I'm given a job to talk to the brothers who are outside selling dope and asking them the question, how long do you think you can go before you become somebody's girlfriend in prison? Because the size of you definitely gonna be somebody's girlfriend in prison. You're only 5'2", 120 pounds. You're somebody's best girlfriend. So my question is, how long can you do it? Do you think you can do it before prison hits you? I've been in prison twice. No, you've been in jail twice. You're now of the age for prison.
Or you get killed.
All that comes from the movies. I mean, I remember, we used to have black movies with integrity, until the 70s, and you had Superfly.
But again, all of that black exploitation. But black exploitation films were not done by blacks. They didn't.
Not at all.
We didn't own them.
That was the Hunt brothers.
Right. They were down, and they
genocide.
said this planned genocide. Just like in '71, if your husband is home, we can't give you the money and the support you need for the 5 children because he doesn't have a job, you don't have a job, but the system wants wants to help you, but you can't have a man in the house. But they were helping Lily. They were helping Karen stay in the house with her husband. Both of them didn't have jobs. The coal miner's daughter was doing okay with her hillbilly husband in the house. Why didn't you tell him to get out? You told us, I'll give you LBJ's housing if you get rid of your husband. And if I come to inspect, he better not be there. Well, what did you do first? You broke down the family. Without the structure of a family, you cannot raise much. Listen, you can't be a farmer on a farm alone.
How do we change all this stuff?
We
understand the basics.
Yes, indeed.
We're raised with the basics.
Yes, sir.
God's spirituality has to come through in a personal way. You are your brother's keeper.
I agree.
We are the original people of the planet.
Yes,
Of the
indeed.
universe.
Mother,
And we
teacher,
want to be
father,
setting
excellent.
the example for the rest of the planet.
That's
and
right.
the matter of the family is crucial.
Right.
A
It's
girl
everything.
cannot grow and marry a man not knowing what is to be expected of a man. And that man
And expected of a woman
is to be
as
the
a
man
mother.
who raised her as well
Now, where
as
is
the
that
mother
today?
for the son.
Where is that today?
See,
Now
so
that's where the break. So
that's
let's
it.
talk about that, because when
Okay.
when you claim to be born in the 1940s, there still was a structure
41.
in place.
I remember
Right.
trolley cars on 125th
You
Street.
remember, but
And
when
the electric overhead buses with the, with the wires.
but you
Remember those?
went
That was the
home.
50s.
You went home to this dynamic. You went home to a father who was at work and a mother who baked the cookies today if you did all your homework. The point is, you went home to a structure.
Yeah.
And my older brothers were born in the late 50s, and I being born in 61. I still had the remnants of that important
Yeah.
structure. By the time 75 rolled in, I went to school. I went to private school, so I was fortunate. But when I used to leave my school and walk through my neighborhood and listen to kids saying, I don't know if my dad's gonna come. He hasn't come for 3 months. I'm thinking to myself, what are they talking about? Their dad hasn't come where for 3 months? I didn't know they didn't have fathers at home. Like, why wouldn't your father be in your house if your mother married him and there's babies? The psyche of that started to affect me, because then it was conversations in the school playhouse area or in the play yard area on a Saturday, where kids say, oh, I gotta go, because my mother said I gotta be home. My father's picking me up today. Why is he picking you up today? Why doesn't he pick you up every day? Oh, why doesn't he? I didn't
Isn't he at
understand. Was he
home?
going to
Yeah.
pick you up? Was he carrying you? So I began to get in, by the 13, 14, I began to realize that I'm like a phenomenon. I have a father and a mother in my home.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm a phenomenon. I don't want to be a phenomenon. I want my friends to have, the fear that my brothers had, that they don't want to ever get hit by my father. Like, there's no way. There's the idea that he could knock me through the window is just not going to happen. Or the idea of I got to be home at 8 o'clock because it's curfew. Like, there was no one there. So let's look at what happened. So without monitoring children, children started having children.
Right.
What do you do when a 13-year-old gives birth or a 14-year-old gives birth? Grandma's not going to say, okay, now you know how to give the baby your breast milk. They're going to get in it. They're not going to try to figure out.
For years.
Oh no, and I agree. It happened on.
But the family.
But the
took
family
care
was
of
instructed, because even on the plantations, babies were having babies.
That's it.
But we had structure.
Yeah.
We broke a structure, and then we asked society, tell us how you're going to give it to us. And they say, oh, I'll show
We'll
you.
give it to you,
Bang,
right.
bang, and put your son behind bars and your
Right.
daughter too.
And
That's
let all
the
the
new
drug
way.
dealers become rappers and
Right, but
teach you how
all
to be a gangster.
listen, we all watched Godfather when they said, send it to the nigga, right?
Right.
We watched it. Send it to the N-word special. We
And-
watched that statement, the Molies, the
a
Moolies, give it
a
to
couple of gangsters,
The real
benevolent
gangsters.
in Harlem who stopped most of that stuff.
There were
Yeah,
some that said, no,
Bumpy
you won't be
Johnson
bringing
was
it
one of
here.
them.
Yeah, and then you had Nixon and Haldeman. It came out later that Nixon and Haldeman admitted to the fact that they were pushing the drugs into the black neighborhood.
Absolutely.
All right?
Without a doubt.
There was a detective from L.A., I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He died last year. He spoke at a hearing that Barbara Waters had. Barbara
Walters, yes. You talking about the
congresswoman.
interview? Maxine Waters.
Maxine Waters had about 15, 20 years ago. And I remember him telling me, I'm Detective so-and-so, and I'm telling you that the CIA is working with the government to drop drugs into your neighborhoods. And this was an LAPD detective.
LA. Yeah.
All right? Then when you look at the book Compromised by Webb, Clinton, Bush, and the CIA, and how the Sandinistas and the weapons that were being made in Arkansas, the heroin, the cocaine was coming in, and one paid for the other, and the distribution. Right.
Okay.
But that's the book
there.
from 1991,
Yeah,
and
that book
Clinton
is
tried to stop that book from coming out.
Right, to
because
be
it was
published.
about how he got the green light to run, and the distribution of crack cocaine, where we had over 2,000 homicides in New York because of Daddy Bush and Clinton. But this is an ongoing scenario.
It's been an assault on our
Kennedy
lives.
with the mafia was moving drugs out of Cuba.
No matter what it is.
Prior to the Bay of Pigs.
It's always us killing each other, though.
But
so it's planned genocide, so we kill each other. How do we stop that?
Okay, so I love the fact that you say that it plans itself against us, and then we fall into the trap.
That's it.
And that's exactly, but it's a great big trap. 100,000 people see you digging a hole, and the hole goes down 50 feet deep. There's going to be an enormous amount of people after watching you dig that hole that are going to, and you cover it now, you cover it with shrubbery. There are going to be 100 million people that forget that hole is there. Now the question is, why did they forget that hole is there? What could have caused them to not see, as you did this in broad daylight, that there is and they march in one behind the other and fall to the bottom of the earth. Now, the realities are keeping yourself mentally sober and mentally clean is it's a gift from God to get there and stay there. Because once you have violated your temple with sources and substances, that hole in the ground that you saw them digging will be forgotten. You will have amnesia on the very day you need to see ya. And instead, you will march into the hole. Now, we have much of this to deal with.
When these young people see that there's no out but to sell crack to your brother, your sister, and make money to take care of yourself.
We have to talk about the beginning of that.
We have to give them options beyond the quick, instant,
we have to give them
straight. Listen,
one of the things that I see all the time, and then you know it as well as I do, black men didn't have jobs in the 70s. I don't know where all black men, I was much young, I was 10 years old.
Black men didn't have jobs prior to that.
They didn't have, but I'm just saying.
There's no reason not to have a job.
No, he said there's no reason not to have a job.
No, and there's no reason not have a job.
Give me an understanding of what you consider to be a job.
You can always go get a job. If you really want a job, there's jobs out there.
Who will give you a job if they...
Anybody that you're capable, what are you capable of doing?
Okay, I want you to think, hold that thought. That's a great thought. It's even a wonderful statement.
Especially in
it's
the 70s.
Not a fact.
And it's in New York, anyway. See, I'm born and raised in New York.
You can tell he's a Yankee, right? Yeah, Yankees talk like this. But listen, Yankee,
that's all I understand. All I understand is
you
work.
Understand you'll go get some shoe shine,
and
grease.
Get what you want fairly.
I'm going to help you out.
My father was an engineer. Came home from the war. Friends called him, Bart, they got jobs over here in Manhattan, such and such a place. He go, no, we don't have anything. He go to another, we don't have anything. The subway fare was a nickel in 1951, 52.
It's hard to get that nickel,
went up to 10 cents in 52.
My father walked from East New York to Midtown more than once.
I believe it.
To have a white man tell him, oh, we don't have no job, and his friends who were white were working there. Now, my father wound up getting a job in Syosset, Long Island, bought a brand new 1953 Plymouth, and drove to Syosset to work when he couldn't work on a short ride on the A train to Midtown. And with that, my father said, we're out of here. And we were packing to leave to move to Liberia in 1953 because of the fact that he served a country that pissed in his face continuously.
And I want to remind you, my dear brother Yankee, that when black men could not find jobs, in the Southern Hemisphere. They went into the Revolutionary War. They went into the war with the Confederacy. They went into anybody's war to get meat, shelter, and clothing.
There were blacks in the Confederate.
Yes, there were.
There were more than enough
Yes, there
blacks
were.
in the Confederate. They
Isn't that
didn't.
right?
They
Oh,
weren't
yeah.
protecting the massa. They were sitting down saying, they told me they're gonna give me $5 a month, and I'm gonna get it to put it
Yeah.
away. So I can buy him. So I can buy Hesse, because Hesse's been sold off to Virginia.
I have a
And
photograph.
if I can get $10, that man said I can buy her.
Confederate
Listen,
flag.
we've been every single war there ever was this country ever
Yeah.
fought. So I never talk about anything. This will fight for these people, scream with them, live in their neighborhood, be their doctor, be their nurse. You're still gonna get slapped in the face unless you understand who you are and don't even get to the point where they start slapping you. But I want to get back to the reality of unemployment is real. Listen, I'm an educator. I realize when I am talking at a university level and watching a school of engineering students and medical students graduating at the top of the class, I'm not even going to talk about the bottom, who are not employed, and I meet them 2 years later and they tell me I'm working at something in a warehouse, and I'm saying, pardon me, you got your master's degree in public health, but there was nobody that would hire me. And I'm sitting here and I'm in
Where
my
is
psyche
it?
thinking,
In the South?
no, I'm talking about New York
York.
City.
You're talking about New York.
Yeah, the City University of New York, right? At City College. And I'm saying, what do you mean? So immediately, right now, I've got to go be the octopus that I can be and say, come to my office and make a couple of calls. And I'm calling the Black Engineering Association and saying, I'm sitting here with an engineer of extraordinary measure. In fact, this is a summa cum laude graduate from City College, and I'm understanding he's working in a warehouse. Can I send him to your office, not only to join your association, but I'm sure you can intern him? They tell me, no, send him to my office because I need him to work.
Right.
Now, I'm saying to myself, but this is a poor kid. His ancestry is from Haiti and Jamaica. He doesn't know any resources. He's at an institution. He went to the college has a career center. He went there 15 times. He's a summa cum laude graduate. He should have been told that everybody wants you. You have job opportunities. Listen, take 15 of these apps because they're calling us for you. This is what the other students get.
Right.
I've never seen a white student graduate from that institution that isn't going to go to their work in their field. So what I had to sit there and say to myself, now I got to be a watch guard. I got to watch this stuff. I got to watch these kids coming out of here that haven't had internships. There's internships in every program that is going to, even in accounting, there's internships in it. I got students graduating in accounting, they've never done an internship. I said, how the hell do you know you can do the books? I don't know, because when I went to the thing to get my internship, they said they didn't have them this year. I said, well, they didn't have them ever? You were in accounting for 4 years. And then I realized racism is showing its ugly face everywhere. And so I don't know who knows. The system can't beat me down because I will stomp on it. Not only spiritually, I will say, excuse me, who's that behind you? Are you in charge of this person? Well, then I'll deal with you because I will sue everybody in here until I get my results. However, I have to say that word and it scares you. I don't want to scare you, but I want the right of who I am to be acknowledged for what I do, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Now, I have to take care of my kids who can't say that to you. But I'll be doggone if an engineer, a medical student, an accountant can't find work in New York City because you haven't set them up for wins. I have seen this on so many levels, Brother Christ, that it has made me clear that all of us who have a mouth, an eye, and can see are on missions to take care of. That child that I got to go to the Black Association of Engineers was taking care of 4 of his younger siblings and a mother in a wheelchair at home.
Did he get a job?
And couldn't get a job out of a factory. Of course he got a job. I saw this kid later, he's in a suit and a tie, 2 years later, and he's talking to me and tears are coming down his eyes. He said, I remember when you sent me. I said, please, never give me credit for that. I sent you where God wanted you to go to save your life and the life of your family, because subsequently all of his siblings siblings have gotten into
Well,
college.
then we need more sisters like you.
We
out
just need
there.
everybody working, because I'm about as tired
that's
as
it.
everybody could be.
That's
You know
it.
how long I've been doing this? I've
Well,
been
see,
doing this for 26 years. I'm
your
exhausted.
attitude has to come from all the sisters.
But there's everybody has work to do at their own
What
job.
about-
You on
Yeah,
your
wherever
job,
you are, do what you
open
can.
the gate
That's
for
it.
others. Do not sit
Well, how
down and
many
say, I'm a
sisters-
supervisor. I'm not going to hire no black people because they lazy. Excuse me. Hire the black people that are not lazy, because if you exist, there are others.
They will hire incompetent white people.
They do it all
They'll
the time.
They'll hire Sally, Jack. Oh, this is so-and-so's son. And because he's so-and-so's son, he gets a job. All right? We had white cops whose uncles were inspectors, and the white cops were falsely arresting blacks and Latinos for crimes they didn't commit. We finally caught up with them, and they went to prison. But the fact is, don't worry about what they're going to say. Do what you can do for one of your own people.
And
Well, let's
Especially when they
find
qualify.
something that we can
Especially
do
when
as
they
a team.
qualify.
As a
And that's
team, we have
that
to awaken
bringing
each
pride
other.
and passion of love of self to our people.
And I
That's
love
what
the
I
fact
wanna
that that's what you want. And as an
That's what I
elder,
wanna do.
I want to say to you, I thank you for this opportunity, because shows
Okay.
like this bring out facts and truth. But what we all have to do is take a look at where we are and stop looking at the desperate and the dark. Find the light and give light to someone. If every single person of African heritage took on just one person and said, you know, I'm going to buy a school book for that kid whose mother doesn't work. I'm going to make sure that that kid has at least 2 new outfits to go to school with because I can afford it. And I'm going to make sure that Christmas they get a pair of new shoes and some boots. One person doing that with one
That's
kid,
why
we wouldn't
I-
need anybody in
I
anybody
take this-
else's community.
I take this show as a calling to play devil's advocate and bring out all the bad parts of us as a people. And one of the worst parts is how we kill each other.
We're
And we
killing
gotta
each
do-
other because we
Little
hate
bit bad bull-
ourselves.
Yeah, that's what we got to
Period.
That's what we got to change.
But we can't change hatred until we see love. How
Well,
do I
we have to
like
show-
me
you
if
have to
I
love
don't
yourself.
even? Yeah, but I am I deal drugs, and let me tell you, I've talked to dealers. My profession makes me do it. And when they say things like, "I'm just waiting for somebody to put a bullet in me because I ain't worth nothing." What? I mean, how?
Because
Okay,
he
you want
knows
to
he's
erase
killing
that?
his own people.
Yeah, but you want to erase that? That's a lot more than a discussion. That's a lot more than would you like a biscuit? How about we get you, how about we
That's
get you
one
some a
individual.
home cooked meal? But that may be the mindset of hundreds of individuals.
It is.
The point is, I still
Millions.
don't get to give up. I also don't get to leave my community as a result of it.
That's-
Right? I get to say, this is where my fight is. And this is where my fight is.
Well-
because God has brought us through much more difficult times.
30 seconds, and I just want to say, you as a black female have to bring more of your joy and your intensity to us more often. So we can,
It's always a pleasure, Brother
so we
Christ.
can have a sane existence. And you got to vote, remember, because this one is desperate. The God in me still loves the God in you, no matter where you're coming from. Just love yourself. God be with you. Power to the people.
Pride and joy. We got to get back on.
I remember the song,
Carolyn
Pride and
Anderson.
Joy.
That's it.
You know, I
That's
spoke
right.
to, there was
I
a
ran
junior
into
high
a
school
drunken kid on the
who was
on the
dealing
corner
drugs.
the other day. Let
He
me
wound
tell
up
the
dead.
story.
Wait.
I'm coming out of my local store on the corner. This kid, I remember him when he was a kid. I say, he comes up to me. He's 42 now. I must have known him 30 years ago. He comes up to me. You remember me? And he says,
Oh, wow.
I said,
He
yeah, I remember
remembered
you.
you.
Yeah, because everybody notices me, because I'm an old man. I've been around a long time. So he says to me, you know me? I need your phone number so I need some help.
Wow.
I said, he said to me in front of everybody, there must have been 30 guys out there. And he, but go to Roland.